My name is Matej Malovrh, Matthew in English, and I run Adriatic Moto tours from Slovenia, the capital, Ljubljana in Slovenia. We're not going to talk about that area very much today. We came here to see how motorcycle touring looks like in the Mediterranean Europe. You will recognize that term. This is north of the Mediterranean Sea mostly. We don't go south of Mediterranean. That's northern Africa. We don't ride there. Now, if at any time during the presentation you'll have any question, it's by far the best if you just scream the question or possibly raise your hand, and I'll try to answer the best I can. And then at the end, we have plenty time, but I hope I'm not going to use the whole 1.5 hour, and sincerely hope so. And then you can ask questions at the end as well. So, Mediterranean. You do obviously, at least to some extent, recognize what those regions would be. You'll see on the map France, Italy, Greece. This is what we count under Mediterranean Europe. There's more to it. There's more of Spain, southern Portugal. We don't go there. So let's go. Just a couple of words. I started riding 15, 16, delivering newspapers on a Tomos moped. I talked about that yesterday, and quite a few guys were familiar with Tomos. It's a Slovenian moped, 2 gears, later 4, which they made, and they sold quite a few of those in the States. I saw one in Washington, D.C. on my first visit in '97. Anybody recognizes that word or no? Tomos? No? Yeah, that was before they introduced scooters to the world. No scooters back then, yeah, real nice mopeds, yeah. Road.
Pedal it?
No. No pedaling.
No pedaling?
No. Just the first one was.
You had to pedal it to get it started.
Yeah, but no, not this one. Just a kickstart. Kickstart, real cool. But today, mostly off-road. I ride beautiful stuff. You have great off-road riding in the States, much better than in Europe. But I'd say it's the other way around for road riding. You'll see what I'm talking about. So.
Wait, back that up. You went through the snow like that? Was that you?
This.
Through the snow?
Yeah.
Did you have spikes on?
No, this is snow bike. This is a 450 KTM in Revelstoke, Canada. Last year and the year before.
You had the track or something on it?
It's a ski in front and a long track in the back.
Yeah.
And you need powder as fresh as possible, and it just blows you away. It's good to have some enduro off-road riding knowledge for this, but it's just amazing stuff. We don't do that on our tours, okay? and you can't do stuff like that in Europe. It's not allowed. Okay. So I'll just give you a really quick insight on Adriatic Moto tours. Present the tour itineraries with photos mostly, and then towards the end tell you how we do it. As we go, I'll also be telling how this all works on guided tours. Actually, let me ask you a question. How many of you have been to an organized guided motorcycle tour in the past? Okay, so maybe 1/3 of you. Okay, that's pretty good.
He won't raise his hand.
He's embarrassed. Okay, definitely a phenomenal way to see any part of the world, not just Europe, but seeing the world off a motorcycle. Of course, you've ridden here, most of you, is a completely different experience from any other means of travel or seeing the world. Bicycle, in my opinion, comes close, because then you see even more and smell more, but motorcycle is just phenomenal. If you compare that with bus or cruise or anything like that, you travel the world or Europe, that's just mind-blowing. So I started the company in 2003, and 2004 was the first year. I only had 3 guests the first year. We'll never forget Hank and Larry and Liliana. from Florida. Met them in Florida a year later, phenomenal people. And then with only 2 bikes the first year, F650 GS and the new 1200 GS, which came out back then. And then, of course, we were the first motorcycle tour operator in the Balkans. Or let's put it in anything that's east of Italy and Austria. We will see on the map. Do I have the map here? Yeah, here. So in 2004, nobody was, so this is Slovenia here, little tiny country. Used to belong to Yugoslavia, which was about this big. Used to be 20 million people in the country. Now we're 2 million with our own language, Slovenian. And then in 2004, there was nobody organizing tour in this part of the world. There were companies throughout Western Europe, but because this was 10 years after the war, the Balkan War, for, you know, when countries of ex-Yugoslavia fought for independence, nobody dared to come to those countries. That was 10 years after the war, which was pretty amazing because it was all good and peaceful, but, you know, people remember wars for a long time. I think some people still think there's war there after 30 years. So we expanded a lot throughout Europe. We got to about 130, 140 bikes pre-COVID, and then relaxed a little bit for a couple of years while COVID was on, very much. That was really good 2 years. And then started working again and grew to, again, 140 bikes approximately, mostly BMW. We'll see the bikes later. Just a few ideas why anybody would choose us, maybe amongst all the tour companies out there. There's definitely a bunch of great touring companies around here, but we really try to focus on the local experience more than anything. When you get there, we try to show you the best of the local stuff. That is by taking you to local restaurants. That's very important. Not eating buffet dinners at a hotel. We absolutely never do something like that. We pick nice boutique hotels, small places, try to get away from chain hotel, big chains as much as we can. The destinations that we ride, you will see on the next photo, are the best stuff you can find in Europe, apart from Iberian Peninsula, which is Spain. We don't go that far west, but great riding, all mountains, and ride roads less traveled is our slogan, and that's what we're trying to find as much as possible. So no highways. You don't need a whole lot of wind protection like you guys have here on the GTs and RTs. So no highways, only small, beautiful roads. Great variety of bikes, mostly BMW, but also a few other brands. We'll see that later. And the guides, we'll talk about that as well. Just quickly go through which areas we cover. So again, the company I started was, I was planning to ride Slovenia first, you know, just do motorcycle tours in Slovenia. Slovenia is the size of New Jersey. So I quickly realized that won't be much of a business. And then renamed the company from Slovenia Moto Tours to Adriatic Moto Tours a couple of years later. Now, who knows what's Adriatic, by the way? What this word means? You do know.
I know it's the sea.
Yeah, Adriatic is the sea. A lot of people actually, I ask it just, oh no, I'm not sure. It sounds really nice. Sounds kind of romantic. But a lot of people don't know that it's, you know, it's the Adriatic Sea. And most of the Adriatic coastline here belongs to Croatia, and only about 25 miles of it belongs to Slovenia, and a little bit more Montenegro. You can see it vaguely here on the map. So first we expanded mostly into Eastern Europe. This was the first 10 years, definitely our specialty. Nobody was riding there. The Balkans, Croatia, Serbia, Romania later, Bulgaria, Greece, very quickly we went there. Central Europe, Czech Republic, Slovakia, I mean Hungary here, Slovakia, all these countries. Then moved to the Alps, although there's plenty of motorcycle touring in the Alps already. We made really phenomenal tours of the Alps. This is the Alpine mountain range. And then at the same time, because we're so close, Italy, obviously, here with Sicily and Sardinia and Corsica. And this year, actually last year for the first time, we started riding all the way to Barcelona. This is as far west as we go, and as far west, I think, as we'll ever go. Because there's so much of this fabulous riding here that we just can't get enough of it. But yeah, again, today we'll talk about tours around Italy, this red line, this kind of greenish, sort of bluish line down in the southern Italy, Greece a little bit, and then Provence and southern France. Okay, so let's see what's next. This is the first tour that I'll present. Probably I'll spend the most time talking about it, and this is definitely not because it would be in any ways better or worse than the others, but probably just because we've had it for the longest time, and I've done this tour so many times, and I feel so close to me, and it's such a phenomenal ride. The tour is 16 days long altogether. We call it Tuscany, Sardinia, Corsica. Obviously Tuscany, this area, I'm sure quite a few have spent some time there. If you go to Florence, it seems like half the people you see on the streets there are from US. Then Sardinia. This is one of the biggest islands in Mediterranean, Corsica, French. And then back to mainland. This is on a ferry. People ask me, how do you do this? Because it seems that a lot of Americans are not used to taking ferries, because, you know, inland US there's not too many. And then this is an overnight ferry from a town called Livorno, and we get on the ferry around 9 or 10 p.m. Each of us gets a cabin, or a couple gets a cabin, really nice, on the boat. Dinner on the boat, breakfast on the boat, works super nice. 7 in the morning, you wake up in Olbia, and off we go for the ride. Beautiful. And then a couple of shorter ferries here between the islands and getting back to the mainland. 4 rest days on this tour. This is very important for you to understand that all of these motorcycle tours have rest days in between. So by no means this is just a tour for motorcycle riding, okay? Some people, this is a major mistake. Usually wives, unfortunately, think that. They don't know how this works. These tours are not just motorcycle riding. This is a real visit to these countries, okay? You really get to experience. You get to experience cities, the sights. You can go museums. You can even go to cooking classes if you want on rest days. We don't get a whole lot of that, but the rest days are phenomenal because we spent 2 nights. See, all these dots, like this one or this one, this is a 1-night stop. But where it says R, this is a rest day. So very quickly after we start the tour in Venice, this is where the tour starts and ends. This is where you fly in and out of. Of course, you can spend a couple of extra days. This is highly recommended in Venice. You want to see that place if you haven't been there before. Touristy, of course, but just one of the most amazing places anywhere. And then through Bologna, Florence, rest day, and Siena, rest day. You cannot just get there in the afternoon and leave it in the morning. These towns are just absolutely too fabulous. You will see a few photos. And the same goes then for Alghero on Sardinia. And Cinque Terre, this is an amazing surprise. We'll go there later. But
It's Ducati, that's where the Ducati factory is?
Absolutely, yeah.
They have a town called...
Well, no, there's no town called Ducati. Yeah. No. The towns on the map are with these thick letters.
Black letters.
Yeah, this is sites that we go see. Okay, let's go see Tuscany, Sardinia, Corsica tour. Again, the tour starts in Venice. As you know, the entire city of Venice was built, or maybe you don't know, but it was built on this lagoon on the sea, not on the mainland, on solid grounds. But because they wanted to be better protected from whoever came, invaders or whatever, they moved into the marshes, into the lagoon, and started putting thousands and tens of thousands of pillars into the marshes, and then putting soil on top and sand or whatever, and built city on top of it. Venice grew into massively important trading state. In the Middle Ages, basically, lasted for maybe 700-800 years, the whole thing, and then fell apart when Napoleon came in 1800s. That was end of Venetian Republic. Venetian Republic, they called themselves Serenissima, their Italian word, and with a lion in the crest. You will see that everywhere you go. Venice was extremely important power throughout the Middle Ages.
How do they do the sewers there?
How do they do the sewers? Easier than ever. I mean, how do you?
Just dump it out there.
Of course. What do you mean? Yeah. It's not like people swim in this, okay? You take gondola, you know the gondola in Sole Mio, or what that song is, the guy sings, very expensive. Exactly, yeah. Venice was very interesting in the past because they were so totally dependent on trade and ships. It all happened on the sea. That in the Middle Ages, of course, when you went a long ways away from a city like this, you'd bring back diseases, a lot of them, bad diseases. So Venice is an interesting fact. Came up with quarantine, which is, you will remember quarantine very well from the recent COVID happiness, right? And they came up with this because ships that came back, sailors bringing diseases, the ship came to Venice, had to sit on the sea without anybody getting off the ship for 40 days. Wow. 40 days. Okay, so you were out in the sea. This wasn't happening very quickly 500 years ago, you can imagine. Ships going to Africa or whatever. And they came back, and they saw their house, and then they had to stay for 40 days. And because in Italian, 40 is 40, therefore quarantine, okay, comes out of 40, 40, so that you know why this kind of connects. Luckily, they didn't have us in quarantine for 40 days while COVID was on, right? Okay, Venice, beautiful place. You absolutely have to spend a day here if you get into the region early. The first day on the tour, we ride straight to Bologna and we visit Ducati factory and museum. Great thing to see. You see production, you see the museum, you see their GP bikes. As you may know, Ducati is doing pretty good, I think, in GP these days, right? Okay, and then the next destination you may remember from photos was Florence. This is, anybody recognizes what this would be? The cathedral in Florence, Duomo, is they call it in short, Duomo means the dome. It took 140 years to build this church. In the between 1200s and 1400s, Brunelleschi was the super famous architect. You can imagine he didn't live throughout the building for 140 years, but amazing place to see. These are people here, see, on the top, massive. When they built the dome, that was the biggest dome in the world, but then later in Rome they built a bigger one. But absolutely great place to visit. And this is, anybody maybe? Ponte Vecchio, meaning the old bridge.
James Bond.
James Bond?
Under that bridge.
Yes, absolutely. James Bond. I love James Bond. I always tell stories about James Bond. There's one to follow, okay? But this one I forgot. He takes boat. They're racing with these supercars and then with boats on this Arno River. But what I find super interesting about this bridge is that when they built it, all these shops were butcher shops. Okay, why would they put butchers here? Of course. So when they, do the animal and take the meat, there's a lot of stuff left that kind of is pretty bad and stinks and you want to get rid of it, just throw it into the river and off it goes. Very easy. I think sanitary inspections these days wouldn't be quite happy with that. So later on, they turned this place, most of the shops are goldsmiths today. But this was a very special bridge. Medici family, which was the wealthiest and the almightiest dynasty that ruled Florence, had their own passage here at the top, because this is, in 2 floors, shops at the bottom, private passages on the top.
A lot of Venetian glass blowers there?
Also, but most of that you find on Lido Island, or Murano actually, island in Venice, yes. And of course, the famous David, Michelangelo's masterpiece. Amazing thing. This is actually a copy. It's on Piazza Signorina in the middle of Florence. This is one-piece marble, probably from here to about there, okay? It's this tall, this statue. Amazing. Maybe 12 feet. The original you can see also in Florence in the museum. Galleria, it's called, the museum. And then this is what Tuscany looks like on a nice spring day. So if you go there, we run this tour one time late April, early May, usually, which is my preferred time of year for motorcycle touring almost anywhere in Europe because everything is super green like this. Wildflowers, if you go to the right place, all over. So Tuscany in spring is like that. I don't think I have a photo. This turns very goldish, brownish in the fall when they cut usually wheat on these hills. It looks super beautiful then as well, but this is really the best time of year for me. And then of course, vineyards. Tuscany is super famous in Italy for wine. Italy is the biggest wine producer in the world.
And olives?
Sorry?
Olives.
No, I don't think so. Greece would be much bigger in olives. Italians actually buy hundreds of tons of, that is a fact. Italians buy hundreds of tons of Greek olive oil, and then they totally rebrand it and mix it up and sell it as Italian olive oil. Hundreds of tons. But wine, which wine is the most famous Tuscan wine, obviously? Chianti, and then Brunello, which is basically made out of Chianti wine grape. 5 billion liters per year of wine they make in Italy, which makes like 3/4 of this makes 1 bottle of wine per inhabitant of this planet each year, which I think is a lot of wine. I wonder who drinks that. And French make almost as much as Italians. And this is obviously a typical Tuscan countryside with these twisty roads. Super nice riding, very little traffic, high quality asphalt, but we'll see later, not as great as, super great, but on Sardinia it gets even better. So this is still Tuscany. So we spent 1, 2, 3, 4 days riding in Tuscany. This is Siena. Torre di Mangia. This tower is. This is the town hall. They built this, I believe, 1200s. And this clock tower, very cool fact, they built 87 meters high. This is just short of 300 feet. And why exactly that height? Because that's exactly the same height as the bell tower of Siena Cathedral. And what did they want to show with that? That the civil and church power is the same, okay? 'Cause back then this was very important, okay? Who's more important, whose power is greater? And then obviously for Siena, it was equal. That was very interesting. This is the cathedral, and this square, Piazza il Campo, it's called. You don't see it that great, but it's leaning towards this truck here and totally surrounded by restaurants and bars. And who comes into play here? James Bond. This is Palio, the race, the extremely famous race of Siena. So twice a year, we're not in Siena for these races because this is in July and August. You don't want to ride in Italy ever, except in the Alps in July and August. It's too hot, like right now. But they have this race on Piazza El Campo. This is the tower, which I showed you earlier. They put soil, thick layer of soil all around. Thousands of people watch this. And the race with these horses, very interesting because they race, it's not international race or anything like that. It's the representatives of city wards. Contrade, they're called, like different parts of the city. They race bareback, yeah, that's the word. And then these jockeys can push each other off the horse if they want. Absolutely, everything's allowed, but you don't have a whole lot of time to do that because the race only lasts for 3 laps, which is about 90 seconds, okay? So everything this happens and then
Chaos.
90 seconds and it's all done. And of course, the winner is a massive hero, but the winner is a horse, not a jockey. So the horse can win by itself because very often jockeys are thrown off the horse. But then if you see one of the recent James Bonds, he kind of fought the villains here in the middle of Siena while the Palio was on, okay? So you should YouTube that. That was really cool. Yeah, very cool. So Siena, maybe one of my favorite towns in Italy. This, very close by, we ride through on the next day. This is San Gimignano. Very famous town again. We'll have lunch in this place and just relax for a couple of hours. San Gimignano is very famous for these stone rock-made towers where this was not for defense or any practical reason whatsoever. It was strictly for San Gimignano rich families to show their wealth. So wealthier you were, bigger your tower, okay? So there were about 40 in the past, in the Middle Ages. There's, I think, 12 or 11 standing still today. Very, very famous place. And then, I don't think I have a photo, but some of the best gelato is made in San Gimignano and surrounding areas, and people absolutely love here. You'll see, I wouldn't quite say quarter mile, but really long lines of people waiting for that ice cream. Yeah.
Can you define bad gelato for me?
Can I define bad gelato? This is Sardinia. The roads on Sardinia are some of the best roads we take. Maybe the only roads as good as Sardinia that we do on our tours, that we ride on our tours, would be Provence and then Norway. I didn't mention Norway earlier on the map. Maybe some of you noticed. I think there's a map. We go to Norway as well, starting last year. But the roads here are just blow you away. The quality of the asphalt, you think you're on a racetrack. The grippiest roads and leaning corners and everything is absolutely amazing. But the best thing about it is there's no traffic. There's nobody there, okay? Most of the time it looks exactly like you see it here on this. These photos are a little old. You recognize these old GSs. And cork trees. You see all of these are cork trees all over Sardinia. Totally mountainous island. So a lot of beautiful valleys, passes and stuff like that. Not quite the Alps, obviously, but extremely nice. And in spring and fall, this is a great place to be. Coastal roads as well, like this. Again, totally empty. I mean, in the summer, this gets a little bit busier, but we don't go there in the summer. This would probably be on the fall tour. You see everything's turning a little bit brownish. Orgosolo, that's how Italians call it, is the coolest little town on Sardinia, because back in the 70s and 80s, tons of artists from all over, I don't think just Sardinians, but all over Italy, they came here and put these revolutionary murals or graffiti on the walls of houses. It is the best to read this. And of course, they're all in Italian, but it's unreal. You go here and you open Google Lens, the translator, and it'll translate everything. It's the best. So a few, not the entire town, but maybe a dozen streets are painted like this. Really, really cool. Orgossolo, you'll remember if you ever get there. Bossa, very colorful city. Not so much, you don't see that from here, but all these houses, very few back here are white. There's another place similar to this, Castelsardo, it means, which is Sardinian castle. Very colorful, beautiful. We always ride here on the way to Corsica. And then this is an amazing site, feature, or bunch of these nuraghe, hundreds of these found nuraghe. This is a prehistoric dwellings. All these date maybe 2,000-3,000 years BC. A lot of them still standing. Amazing. Some of them 3 stories high. Massive rocks, but very small rooms obviously inside, but really cool. You can go inside and climb up to the top. Nuraghe, they're called. Very cool. And then of course food in Italy, you would think it's not just pasta and pizza, although those are the best. When we get close to the sea, Sardinia, fish, obviously seafood. This photo I always love. This is actually in Tuscany, not on Sardinia, but there's a pizzeria in Pienza. If somebody's heard of this town, we always go there, in the middle of Tuscany. They give you scissors. You cut your pizza with scissors. Yeah. That's totally cool. We're moving to the next island of Sardinia. Where are we going now? Corsica, yeah. 1 hour ferry. This is in the middle of the day. Perfect for coffee and a sandwich maybe. And this is the first site we get when we get to Corsica. This is Bonifacio. Bonifacio was built up on these cliffs. These cliffs look like England, you know, Dover. Maybe you've seen those photos. Very similar to this.
Is that an elevator going up on the far left there? Is that an elevator going up?
I would,
the shore
no,
up?
stairs.
Stairs?
This, yeah, here. Stairs down to the city. I mean, up to the city or down to the water. But the most amazing thing is the access into this, because when the boat comes from here and then goes around these rocks, this is the access into the sea, and this is the amazing citadel fortress up on top of the hill. This was built in 12 and 1300s by Genoese. Genoa, you recognize the name? Genoa is a big harbor city up in northern Italy, south of Milan, and this was one of the states. So Italy as a country was only born in 1861, which is kind of interesting because you've all heard of Roman and Italian history throughout, you know, the history. Italy has 55 World Heritage sites, more than any other country in the world, and that mostly goes, or the biggest reason for that is that after Roman Empire, Romans, of course, were all over Italy and the neighboring countries. When that fell apart in the 4th century, the Roman Empire, or at least the Western Roman Empire fell apart in the 4th century, then the entire Italy, or what we know as Italy today, split into small states. Some of them small, some of them very big. Florence was one, Siena was one, Genova one. Pisa became extremely powerful. Then a bunch of Amalfi, you recognize all these names. And all of those were joined in 1861 into one country, kingdom back then, Kingdom of Italy. I'll say a couple of words about it later on. But this was built by Genova, although Corsica now does not belong to Italy, belongs to which country? France, yes. And the coolest fact I found about Corsica is who was born on Corsica, who's the most famous person born on Corsica? Napoleon Bonaparte. He was born in 17 80, I think 70, 80, no, 70, 1778 or something like that. This was 1 year after Genoese sold the entire island to French. Okay, so he was born 1 year after. So technically he was born in France. If he was born 1 year earlier, he'd be born in Genova, which is kind of Italy. So who knows, what would happen then? I find that intriguing. He was the emperor of France and half Europe, of course. This is a statue of Napoleon in Ajaccio. Ajaccio is the capital city of Corsica. We stay one night here, not on this tour, but on shorter version of this tour. I'll tell you about that. Obviously, emperor for 11 years. Amazing. And this is what riding on Corsica is like. This asphalt, the grippiest thing you can imagine, and made out of this red rock. Again, very, very little traffic. A lot of the roads follow the coastline. Corsica is even more mountainous than Sardinia. This is one of the best, the most scenic riding. Doesn't last for very long, but Calanche de Piana, this is called. These red rocks, we ride right through it, have a coffee stop here, amazing place. We absolutely love this. Corsica, most of Corsica is made of this red rock, and this is Cap Corse. This is, if you looked at the map, I can't show you now, there's this finger sticking out of Corsica up north, very wild kind of area. Didn't have roads probably up to around 70s. That they started building roads. They were totally cut off of the rest of the island. A lot of blood feud. Is it blood feud up there? Like, killing people for revenge? Yeah. Not anymore, I think. So you're pretty safe. So going back from Corsica, we go to the mainland, and this is Pisa, obviously. Pisa was one of those city-states in Italy, made an enormous fortune in the 11th century when they looted Palermo. Palermo is the capital of Sicily, yes? Where Arabic Muslims, Saracen they were called, they controlled Sicily for 300 years. So Pisa and all the rest of those states back then, they fought each other all the time. And Pisa, the Navy came and looted Palermo. They brought a bunch of gold and wealth back. And with that stuff, with that money, they built the baptistry. This is the biggest building here. Cathedral in the middle, and Pisa Tower. It was not meant to be a leaning tower to start with, okay? But of course, that made it so much more famous. And then Cinque Terre. Cinque Terre means 5 villages or 5 earths. Terra kind of means earth in Italian also. We have a rest day here, and we take a boat and we go from one to another. These villages, absolutely super beautiful. Only accessible by train really, or you wonder, train, how does train get here? But it's a bunch of tunnels or boats. We usually take the boat. Beautiful stuff. We spend the entire day just exploring these villages. And then towards the end of the tour, we're now headed back to Venice. We're in Maranello. Maranello is close to Bologna again, and this is the home of Ferrari, of course. And we go see Ferrari Museum, and you can drive a Ferrari actually there for like 15 minutes if you want. Costs about maybe $200 for 15 minutes. But they put a guy next to you, they don't let you just take off. So this is a shorter version. I won't be spending much time here. Sardinia and Corsica tour, because I've told you all about it. This is just a shorter version of what I was telling you about. This tour starts on Sardinia. You fly to Olbia. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nights altogether on Sardinia and 3 nights on Corsica. Okay, take a ferry up, take a ferry down. We do that in the spring and in the fall. 7 days you spend on the bike. One of those is a rest day. So that is if you don't have a whole bunch of time, you do this tour. And again, just a couple of photos more from Sardinia. Is super famous for beaches. I mean, we don't spend too much time there, obviously. on a motorcycle tour, but these beaches get completely packed in July and August. Now moving from Tuscany and the north and kind of central Italy, we go further south. We started doing that a few years later, but it turned out to be a phenomenal tour. This is maybe an even more historical tour than Tuscany and Sardinia and Corsica. Because, why? Because Greeks were in the south of Italy for centuries, and Sicily as a part of this tour, was one of the biggest Greek colonies, okay? And Syracuse, and I know there's a town called Syracuse somewhere in the States. Syracuse at some point was the biggest city in ancient Greece. That's very interesting. Extremely powerful colony in Greek times, and then turned into of course, fell under Roman Empire. The tour starts in Rome, that's where you fly in and out of, and we actually started the tour in Frascati, really beautiful little town outside of Rome, from where you can take a train to Rome. And then we travel first to Napoli, that's Naples, another overnight ferry. We do the entire Sicily, and then we travel back on the boot of South Italy. Really, really pretty. And obviously, Amalfi, you can see there. The first thing, this is not really a part of the tour, because this is downtown Rome. This is the Colosseum. But again, highly recommended if you do a tour, any motorcycle tour in Europe, anywhere, it's highly recommended that you fly in a day or two early, spend a little time there, rest from the flight, get over jet lag, and then go see sites like this. And then, of course, it's not just Colosseum. I don't have photos here, but there's Vatican. Vatican is 1,000, not hectares, but what do you measure your? Acres. 1,000 acres big only. And then it's a separate state, obviously. Vatican, you can spend a couple of days just there,
Separate country.
Separate country, yeah, separate country. I think they became a separate country in the 1920s. So going south of Rome, first towards Naples, we travel again, totally mountainous areas. We see villages like this. We spend a day traveling towards Naples. Of course, Naples, we don't overnight. We get on the overnight ferry there, but we go for pizza for dinner. Of course, you cannot miss pizza in Naples. Pizza comes from Naples, obviously. And this is what pizza?
Margarita.
Margarita, of course. So, I told you earlier, 1861, Italy is formed. In the 80s, I believe, 1880s, the first Italian king, Umberto I, and his wife, Margherita, Queen of Savoy, they were married. They came to Naples. They traveled throughout Italy to, as a good gesture of Italian unity, okay? Because for those states, it was still pretty fresh, to be kind of united. It's not independent anymore. So a local pizza baker made a pizza, and they called it Margherita, because Queen of Margherita, right, of Savoy. And then, of course, because Italy was a new country, and the flag has which colors? Red, tomatoes, white, mozzarella, green, basil. So, of course, this is the famous Margherita cheese, the Italian flag, super famous. Very good. The best margherita you'll ever eat is for sure in Naples. In Naples, they serve sometimes pizzas as a fast food, like real fast food. You will go there, and they don't have different pizzas, they just have margherita. And you tell them one or two, whatever, they're not very big, maybe the size of this catalog, and the guy makes it in 15 seconds, throws it in the oven, super thin. The pizza is baked in, I'd say, less than a minute and a half. And then he folds it, hands it to you wrapped in paper. So that's guaranteed the best margarita you will ever eat. We take a ferry from Naples to Sardinia, big ferries, big cabins, everything works great. And then we land in Palermo in the morning, around 6 or 7 a.m. And we go downtown Palermo, and this is what we get for breakfast. Italian cappuccino, and this is cannoli. Cannoli, yes, freshly filled. They only fill these just before they sell them. Okay, they won't ever sell these the next day because this cream otherwise gets into the dough and it kind of gets a little mushy. That's no good cannoli, okay? So, and Teatro Massimo, actually literally translated into theater maximum or maximum, yes, which makes the biggest theater in Italy. It could seat 3,000 people when it was built. Today, a little bit more comfortable, only 1,500. But one of the biggest theaters in Europe, and I think in the world actually. And then we'll stop along the way sometimes and do some salami and cheese tasting. We love to do stuff like that and buy some, maybe eat for lunch. But Italians are great for this. And then half of the salami and cheese he eats. I think he eats. Yeah. This is Noto, beautiful Baroque built town. Baroque is one of the styles of architecture you may know. Renaissance, Baroque, Romanesque. This is all Baroque. This is Southern.
Also steps in a motorcycle.
If we ride that on a motorcycle?
No, Bond came down on steps.
No, not these steps.
Yes, those steps in a motorcycle.
On Sicily, no.
Yes. Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. But this, you can ride this on an off-road motorcycle, easy. KTM. Yeah. Very doable. I don't think he was, what was he on?
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay, I'll check. Fish market in Palermo. Phenomenal place. You know, these guys screaming for the prize and selling this freshly caught fish. And then Palermo, I told you, the capital of Sicily, and then vegetable markets. We go see that because we spend like half a day in Palermo and stay there overnight. And then we go see Corleone. Of course, a lot of you will recognize Corleone. Who wrote the book? Mario Puzo, yeah. Godfather. But the thing is, this is real stuff, okay? This was not invented by Mario Puzo. There's real Corleone family, and they're basically, or at least used to be, the strongest mafia family on Sicily, which is still very much present today. Obviously, Southern Italy is all run by mafia. You don't see any of that, but all the businesses basically work with mafia very well. I wouldn't say successfully necessarily, but yeah. Okay, Sicily countryside in the spring again. This is again in the spring. Everything is super green. In the fall, turns nice brownish colors. This is what Sicily looks like. What's this, Mount Fuji or? Etna. Yes, 11,000 feet high. It's one of the few active volcanoes around Europe. Every year they have eruptions. And we actually ride, I'd say, up to about this height you can get on a motorcycle. Because this would be in spring again. You see snow on it. Again, Etna in the back. Beautiful stuff. And this is, I wouldn't quite say close to the top, but about as far as you can go on a motorcycle.
So it's been recently erupting.
Oh, yeah.
The last couple weeks.
I don't know about that, but possibly. Yeah. It's erupting quite often. You will see smoke coming out of it every now and then. This is Targa Florio race. Targa Florio was one of the first races in the world, car races. A guy, rich guy, had a bunch of cars in the early 1900s, I think around 1906. He came up with, what am I going to do with all these fast cars? And then he organized a race. It's called Targa Florio. It's in northern Sicily. And today still they kind of replicate the race with these old Italian cars mostly. And some more riding around Sicily. This is Castellammare, the town. And this is an interesting place. I told you that Sicily was a Greek colony, and this is just outside of the modern Agrigento town, and Agrigento was a Roman, but before that Greek town, and they built a bunch of temples there. This is called Concordia, and this is the biggest temple on Sicily, one of the biggest ever made, and very well preserved. And this temple is in the logo of UNESCO. UNESCO is this World Heritage Organization. You may be familiar with that. And this temple is in their logo, so that's very cool. A little bit more of Noto. Syracuse is very similar to Noto, and this is Taormina. This is up in northeastern Sicily. We spent a rest day in this beautiful town, which is elevated maybe 1,000 feet above the sea. Great views from up there. And this is local, okay, on Sicily. You'll see that all over southern Italy. Hard-working guys. They can sit here the whole day. Absolutely. No problem. Yeah. In Italy, there's always politics to discuss. Because every 5 months, they change the chancellor, and not the chancellor, the prime minister or the president. Those governments don't last. Not in Italy. Here, this is already back on the mainland. We take a very short ferry at Messina. They're starting to build a bridge now, actually, to connect. Yeah, it would be one of the biggest bridges anywhere in the world, connecting southern Italy to Sicily, because it's a relatively narrow strait. It's probably a couple of miles, but still they're planning to build a massive bridge over those straits. And then we travel north towards Amalfi. This is in Maratea. It's Christ the Redeemer, one of the biggest statues of Christ in the world. We go see that and spend the night. This is the coast leading us towards Amalfi. Amazingly beautiful. We ride on this road here and go see Paestum. This is more of Greek and Roman ruins, but then also the World War II buffs or fans will know about this place, because this was one of the main landing sites for American troops when you guys gonna invaded Italy. So it was Sicily where you landed, and around Paestum, Salerno area mostly, okay? And then this is Amalfi Coast, the super famous Amalfi Coast, where if you come and ride on these roads in summer, you will go from here to here in 1 hour. And if you're in a car, you will not move, okay? It's absolutely insane traffic, but in the spring and fall when we get there, it's a lot better. But amazing. Positano, some of you may recognize, we go into Positano for lunch usually, because we have a rest day there. And we go see, this is Pompeii. Right? Pompeii was destroyed completely by an eruption of Vesuvio, in English I think, volcano, which is above Naples. This was Vesuvius. Okay. Was it around year 50 or around year 70, or maybe 57 AD? It erupted, and in a couple of hours, the whole town was gone. Okay. Probably the best preserved Roman town to see, because it was all covered by ashes. So when they undug that, you could see a whole lot of cool stuff. This is from one of the hotels we use. I think, yes, that was from South Italy. Now, since I've been telling you about Greece and Greek culture, we'll move through Greek tour, This, for the longest time, has been my favorite tour, mostly for food, people that are just unbelievably friendly. Considering how much tourists they get in Greece, they're just phenomenal. But the food, for me, the best in Europe. And then sights that you see along the way, the roads, the emptiness, no tourists up in the mountains where we ride, just great. Most people understand Greece as islands. Mykonos, Santorini, we don't go there. You should go to some of those places, maybe not to the busiest ones after the tour to relax. But we start in Athens, actually just outside of Athens, in Glyfada, and then we do this anti-clockwise loop through Delphi, the mountainous inland, super mountainous Meteora, another James Bond scene, right? And then coming down on Peloponnese Peninsula. So let's go through the tour. This is Sunio, Poseidon Temple, at the most southern point of Attica. Attica is the region of Greece where Athens is or are. Great temple. There's a Byron inscription here. We go to Delphi. Delphi, the Oracle of Delphi, you may recognize, who talked to Alexander the Great, and they made a few funny decisions because of that. And moving to Meteora. Meteora, this was built also about 1,000 years ago. They started building these monasteries because the Ottomans, the Turks, basically invaded Greece. And a lot of people, mostly monks, they wanted to get away from that. Of course, it was different religion. They weren't quite happy with that. Greeks are Orthodox Catholics, actually Orthodox Christian. And of course, the invading Turks were Muslims. So they built themselves these monasteries up on these sand rock pinnacles. There were dozens of them back in the days, but only 6 remaining today, and we go, of course, visit 1 or 2 of them. Yeah, another James Bond movie. He was climbing not on this rock, but on a Holy Trinity. This was Roger Moore, way back. And then this is typical mountain riding in Greek mountains. Greece, 80% of Greece is mountains. So amazing riding up there. Vikos Gorge, one of the biggest gorges in the world. No road goes through, but you could hike theoretically. Don't have enough time on a tour. Great place to see. And then moving to the Lefkada Island. We don't go to any other islands apart from Lefkada because this is very convenient. There's a short bridge to Lefkada Island. We spent a couple of nights here, go around the island, beautiful beaches, food, relax, very cool. Hire a boat sometimes. And then Peloponnese. This is the riding in southern Peloponnese. Going towards Mani Peninsula. This is one of the hotels where we spend the night, totally made out of stone, like you can see here, having dinner here with this beautiful view in Monuvasia. Monuvasia is this giant rock. There's a Byzantine citadel. Byzantine kind of connects to later Roman period, the East Roman Empire. They built a citadel up here and then a city behind this forest you don't see, but probably my favorite little town in Greece. We spend a rest day here. Amazing, amazing place. You can hike up here on a rest day. Quite a few of us do that. Oh, this is Monuvasia. Yeah, this is it. This is an amazing place. Sorry?
Where are the cars?
In cars. Cars, you can't get in here with a car. You can't get in here with anything. Right here, this is the entrance to the town. This is where you leave a moped. Cars would go way back. And this is only walking and donkeys. Donkeys carry the stuff sometimes.
So cool.
Yeah. And then some more riding down in the southern Peloponnese. Beautiful, beautiful scenery. So totally remote.
No traffic to speak of.
Yeah. One of the places we'll sometimes stop for lunch or even overnight. Not very often we'll manage to get this place, but very nice. And then this, of course, they sell it outside. What is it? Gyro. This is gyro. Yeah. I think my favorite fast food anywhere, because it's pork or chicken wrapped in this pita bread with this, but this is the main thing, tzatziki. Tzatziki sauce. You can have that. There's a Greek food vendor out there. Really, really good. So Greece, if you haven't ever been to Greece, and if you're considering, I mean, obviously I told you motorcycle is by far the best way to do something like that. And then again, spend some time on the islands after that. Take a ferry or flight. This is the last tour that I will talk about today. Also Mediterranean, heavy duty Mediterranean, obviously. And it's the latest of the tours. We actually had a tour going around Provence and Massif Central, which is another province here. So this is all France, you can see here. This is Italy here. This tour does not go to Italy. And this is Spain and Andorra. So basically it's a 3-country tour, although most of the time is spent in France. Sorry? Oh, you just did that. Very good. So he may have a couple of words to say about it. The tour starts and finishes in Nice. Beautiful, super nice town. Very close to Monte Carlo or Monaco, which is only half hour on a train away, around here somewhere, which is a separate country, right? Monaco. So easily you could fly to Nice a couple of days early, go see it. Although not so much to see in Monaco as some would expect. The Grand Casino is probably the best thing to see there. And then Formula One fans, of course, they drive the entire route of Formula. That's kind of interesting. Now, the tour first spends a couple of nights, actually one night, in Provence, Aix-en-Provence, and then rides up to Vercors. This is already high Alps. So this is where the Alpine mountain range starts and would make this giant arch through Italy, Switzerland, and Austria. And then already here, right from the start, there's some of the highest passes in the Alps. On the way back, I might forget mention at the end, we ride over Col de la Bonnette, which is one of the, I think, like the third or second highest pass in Europe. The highest pass in Europe is further up here, Col d'Iseran. But there's a loop one-way loop that's not technically a pass, which I think goes even higher than that, higher than Col d'Iseran. So Col de la Bonnette, phenomenal alpine riding up there. But first start through Provence, which is this part of France, and one night Aix-en-Provence up into the Alps, and then through this gorgeous Massif Central region coming southwest towards Carcassonne. We will hear about that. Andorra, one night here, a couple of nights in Barcelona. That's the only tour that takes us through Spain. And then coming back, we actually stay in another little town here, Perpignan. It's called maybe next time here. And then coming back to Avignon. Avignon is extremely famous place because Pope moved his home, basically, to his residence to Avignon. A long time ago, and then of course moved back to Rome, and then some more French Alps and back to Nice. So we call it French Riviera to Barcelona, and spent 2 weeks on this tour. Nice. 3 rest days on this tour. We'll go through just some of the images from this tour. This would be a typical lunch or maybe dinner bistro type of place. Not a big selection of food in a place like this, but super nice. Of course, French, the way they are, they'll just give you a menu in French. You know, whether you understand or not, they couldn't care less. But thanks to Google Translate again, and some of guides speaking some French at least, you know, we managed to get food actually. But Google Translate, the best thing. You have to use that more often. So food, French food, really, really good. This is the first stop that we actually make on a tour. It's in a town called Grasse. And Grasse is basically the perfume capital of the world, of France and the world. I don't know how many percent, like 60 or 70% of world perfumes come from Grasse. Maybe not the final products, but the essence for the oils which they use, they make in this area. And then we obviously go and visit one of the old perfumeries and hear the explanation, and then you can buy some of those perfumes. And then these roads I mentioned earlier next to Sardinia, and I'd say Norway, Provence has the best riding of all our tours. Again, these empty, super grippy roads, amazing stuff to ride. And then since we're at it, see, this is Ducati. This is one of the brands we use next to BMWs, but I only have one Ducati, one Multistrada.
A lot of roads with no center stripes.
A lot of roads with no center stripes.
So you think you're by yourself, but you're not.
Yeah, you still kind of have to watch out a little bit. Yeah. Bicycles, yeah. This is the balcony road going up north towards Vercors. Very famous place to ride through. We'll always stop here, spend maybe half hour going up and down the road a couple of times, make some shots. This is super cold place. Combe de Laval, it's also called. And then this is the way they basically chiseled this into the rock. Really, really cool stuff. Yeah. Not a whole lot of traffic here, right? Very, very few people get up here because it's not major road that would connect anything much important. Mount Ventoux, about 19 meters high. That would be about 6,000 feet. This totally barren area we ride over this pass, and this is actually a heritage site. Like a natural biosphere, I think they call it. So UNESCO is not just old Roman and Greek buildings, it's also stuff like this that they want to keep preserved. Where if you're listed under UNESCO Heritage Site, there's very few things you can do and build and change. Okay? But then of course it brings you big fame and tourists come see it. Gorge du Verdon. We ride through this gorge. There's a little river down here, beautiful turquoise river. We follow this canyon for a few dozen kilometers. Great riding and more of the great scenery. We'll ride past these lakes, usually artificial lakes that finish with a dam at the other end, but super popular for sports and sailing in the summer. This is in the high Alps, which with some of the highest passes in France, and then of course lavender fields all over Provence and southern France, just starting to turn purple when we're there. Later in July they're totally purple, but we don't want to be there then because it's too hot. Aix-en-Provence, beautiful city, and Nîmes. Nîmes is, we don't always make it here, but it's on the way. Did you go there? Do you remember? No? So. This is the best preserved Roman, Greek/Roman temple in the world, basically. Unfortunately, we're kind of running out of time, usually going to Avignon, and not all the groups will stop here. Square House, it's called this. If anybody speaks French, you can translate it into French, but in English this is Square House French call it. Cool sight to see. And this is Carcassonne. This is a rest day, about halfway through the tour. This is the best preserved medieval fortress and citadel in Europe, therefore in the world, basically. Amazing place. We'll have 2 nights here. We have a guide that takes you around this place in the morning for maybe a couple of hours, and then you have the afternoon free. But this place is magic. And then we don't stay inside the city. That's very hard, of course, inaccessible for any kind of traffic. We stay just outside and then we walk in. And is that your group? No.
That's our picture. There's me.
Oh, look, there's you.
My jeans, my pants.
Well, what happened to your pants?
Those are my air-conditioned pants.
Those are in fashion. With teenagers. And then this is the photo from the Pyrenees, because from Carcassonne we ride to Andorra for 1 night, and then over French, Spanish Pyrenees in the direction of Barcelona. Of course, amazing riding there, high mountains, beautiful stuff.
A lot of really tight switchbacks. I'm talking first gear switchbacks.
Yes, yeah, this would be a lot of tight switchbacks. Yeah, similar to the Alps, basically. Very good roads again.
Andorra is a great city.
Andorra, yeah. It's
a country.
It's a country, but really a city. There's very little outside of the city, except they have a couple of ski resorts.
Everything's tax-free.
And they have the cheapest petrol you can find because it's tax-free. And the petrol stations are up on 1,500 meters elevation next to the ski resorts, like 5,000 feet, because that's where you get into Andorra. Yeah. So, and this is Sagrada Familia, the super famous church. This is in Barcelona. And Gaudí is the architect. And they've been building this since early 1900s. And every 10 years they postpone the date of when they're supposed to finish it for another 10 years. But now they're promising next year it'll be finished. And it is totally close to finishing. If you want to go see it, that's possible. You can go see it inside, but you have to buy tickets like at least 2 or 3 weeks in advance. But just amazing place.
It is incredible.
Yeah.
The park and everything else he did there too is incredible.
Pont du Gard. This is a massive aqueduct. This went over Gard River, 50 meters high, about 150 feet high. The whole thing, not this bridge-like structure, was 50 kilometers, which is about 30 miles long. And the reason they built this, the Romans, was to bring water to Nîmes. Nîmes is the city I showed you earlier with that super nice box-like house temple in the middle. Okay, very important Roman town, and some of the, goes on our tour. What do I have? Another dinner, just from a recent tour. Actually, we're just finishing one of these tours right now in Nice as well. And this is one of the hotels we use, typical French place, beautiful, beautiful thing. Let's see, going back to Nice, and then, okay, dinners, I told you earlier, I'm not gonna spend much time doing this again. Just as typical restaurants as you can find, typical food, French, Greek, Italian, name it. For us, extremely important to find really nice places for you to enjoy evening meal. Lunches are not that heavily important. Obviously, on motorcycle trips, we try to make it quick and light, but dinners, very, very important. Dinners are included in the tour price, all apart from rest days. On rest days, you're supposed to take your lady out on a romantic night on your own. This is one of the dinners, not on this tour, but then in Croatia, I just put this photo on because it shows the atmosphere we try to find. And then this one again, I showed it yesterday. This is actually from Switzerland, but again, one of the interesting places we find, this is in an old gondola. And The only food they serve in here is fondue and raclette, if you recognize these two names. Swiss/French food, cheese, and that's what we eat that day, because that's the experience. You have to try that. The guides, I always say, the guide on a tour is something that makes a difference between what can be a good tour or a phenomenal tour. Okay? There is no phenomenal tour without a phenomenal guide. And I think I probably spent most of my time telling these guys how to run the show. Super fun, enthusiastic, young guys that take you out there and show you the world. Absolutely the most important thing, I think. I mean, hotels, yes, very important. What we feed you with, very important. But if the guy doesn't put all this in a super package, then it's just not right. And in this case, it is. So, very happy with that. This is our early spring rides, which we do. The whole company goes out for a couple of days. We have fun and break in all the new bikes. Usually go to around Slovenia and Croatia, up to 30 of us. This is so fun. Safety, we'll do this. And I mean, fortunately, we don't do this very often, but every year in the spring, we'll have half-a-day course of first aid, just to make sure we can help with any possible accidents on the road. Of course, motorcycle riding, that happens every now and then. We do this, and let's see what else we have. Accommodation, I told you earlier, very nice hotels, boutique, small places. Can't quite call it mom and pops. Those would usually be a little bit too small for us. We'll take up to 10 rooms in these places, not more than that. 10 is also the maximum number of bikes that we take. So, like, this is one of the hotels that we use on our tours. It's a castle, basically, or in Brunn. Did you stay there?
I think so.
Yeah.
By a park, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was a national park or something.
In the Alps. This actually is on Sicily, one of the places we use. But hotels, again, a lot of energy spent on finding nice places to stay. Let's see if I have anything else. Bikes, what bikes do we ride? I mentioned earlier, mostly it's the BMWs. About 80% of our bikes are BMWs. GS is the most popular bike that we use, but definitely, if you go on any motorcycle tour in Europe, I'm not talking around the world, but Europe, on these twisty, narrow roads, one-lane roads very often, don't think big, okay? If you can ride the bike that you ride at home, but seeing the bikes out here, third of these bikes are GTs and RTs. This is not the size of bike you need for these tours, okay? 750, 800, these are all 900cc bikes. GS is the perfect bike if you're a really good experienced rider, but not necessarily you have to have something that big. 100 horsepower, 900cc, absolutely great stuff. And then apart from BMWs, we have a couple of Honda Africa Twins, we have one Ducati, we have a bunch of Yamahas, Suzuki V-Stroms. That's the best, price performing bike there is, the starting category. So anything you feel comfortable with. Low suspension bikes, low seats, anything you want. Good selection, basically brand new bikes. Change them every second year at the latest. This is a fleet of 1,300 GSs, which we broke in last year on one of those rides that I told you about. 19 different models altogether we have. I think that'll be about it. Let's see. Let's skip that. And just one more happy group from, this is actually Plitvice National Park in Croatia, but I always show this group. This group for the end. So that's about what I wanted to say about the trip. If you guys have any questions, we still have tons of time, or you can come to the booth. Thank you.